Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. First and foremost, thank you to the ILA for putting on such a fantastic event. The production's incredible. I've been having a great time so far. I'd probably be a bit remiss if I wasn't also grateful for the fantastic setting, and for thanking you all for being in here when you could be out there at the lovely Copacabana Beach, but maybe we can get there soon enough. We're going to talk about this afternoon for a little while the intersection of artificial intelligence and design. How many of you believe you've interacted with AI in some way, right? Probably through phone trees, etc. How many of you have had your design work influenced by AI? Some of us, maybe some of us don't even realize we've done that yet. Well, last night my friend invited a couple of us out to dinner, lovely restaurant in Ipanema called Bazaar, fantastic place. And he challenged me a bit to take on the AI sketch test, in which I would be presented with a word to then sketch. And let's see how the robot takes that on. And so we started with this little application he loaded up. Just said, quick, draw this. Can the neural network learn to recognize my doodle? And the first time it said, draw an angel. And so this is my doodle. And I used to pride myself somewhat on my doodling and sketching capability. I'll let you all judge me now, briefly. So the robot sees a flamingo, it sees a butterfly. Okay, that's me working intently, getting more and more focused on my doodle. And I was asked to draw an angel, and the neural network did not understand it, but it thought that maybe I was drawing a koala, not quite, a flamingo. So don't take me in front of clearly any clients or your organization's design leaders, because we're not going to get too far. But the thing that it was looking for, the reason why it was believing in these things and what you could see once it started to explain more to you, was these were the things that it was seeing from other people. Now you might agree or disagree that I had some of these characteristics in my own doodle, but you could see at least what the AI was trying to inform us of. So I'll just jump to one more here where it asks to, it says draw a bee. So this was my bee. The last time I saw a bee, it was on the sidewalk walking. It wasn't flying. So what's my bee missing? It's missing wings and a stinger, but you know. Because the bee was walking on the sidewalk, that was my context, right? Because what humans do, especially what designers do, they contextualize. You put things into your own context. So this was my bee. Well, I was asked to draw a bee, and again, this was not recognized. This is an ant. This is a shoe. What did everyone else that showed the AI a bee, what did they have in their doodle? They had wings. The robot's only as good as you make it, right? This is an important lesson for us to take forward as we shape AI ourselves. It's only going to be as good as we make it. Over the last 10 years, perhaps, there's been more superhuman breakthroughs thanks to AI than in any other time. And the way that it's manifesting itself to be easy for humans to consume is not through entire house automation, which is, of course, possible. But no, it's through smaller steps. Alexa, put on some music. Siri, what's the weather outside? These small steps are introducing us to the superhuman power of AI. And that's just because that's how humans like to embrace it. So clearly, organizations are being thoughtful about how we're going to digest this technology. What we're seeing at Stanford University in the San Francisco Bay Area, where I'm from, is the application of AI in diagnosing pneumonia. What they're finding is it can actually diagnose it better than a radiologist. All right, so assisting that, making it faster, reducing errors. The implication here is actually lives being saved. Right, so it's quite powerful, and this is where we're seeing a lot of application of AI in the assistance of this. It doesn't mean the doctor is no longer present, and we'll get to that, the human interaction here a little bit in a moment. But it does mean the diagnosis is far more accurate. AI can read lips better than professional lip readers. The implications here are far-reaching. A professional lip reader, maybe we've got some here, we can share the results, their accuracy is about 14%. AI is accurate at about 50%, 50. And the mistakes tend to be spelling errors and plural. And so extremely accurate in these regards. All right, some incredible applications of AI. So the time has come, but I think as you can sense even from some of these anecdotes, more progress is needed. And I thought I'd detail just a little bit of that through a short movie here, and that hopefully plays nicely for us. And maybe I click again to make it start. Thank you. So consider this. Entire populations excluded, right, from the way a neural network works. How can that even be possible? Yet today, this technology is in use everywhere around us. Right, so it becomes at some point maybe even a little bit terrifying to think about the mind that exists that can actually exclude entire populations. One of the things that I believe we all do as designers is we see opportunities in the present for things that don't exist in the future, right? And therein lies our fantastic opportunity to truly invent what doesn't exist yet. And historically, I think probably most profoundly over the last 10 years, we've done this through design research, building empathy, deep insights, contextual inquiry, and likely looking at data sets. Right? Let's bring in the data, let's go talk to people, let's understand things. That's how you hit the moving target. You don't ask people exactly what they want, you understand their context, and then you create what they need. Well, now with AI, we can do that more than ever. We just need to adhere to a certain number of principles to allow ourselves to do so. If you've seen the recent report from John Maida on design in technology, or if you haven't seen it, I'd certainly encourage you to do so. It's quite fascinating, and it's very much in depth. There's one slide in particular that I really like, and it's this one. And in it, John talks about the progression or the shift over time of designers. So going from what he would call classical design. This is the craft of design, the creation of the artifact, design doing. So I think many, many of us in the room do this well. If you were to look at my doodles, you would say, likely, I do not. But in any case, classical design, the creation of the craft. Shifting to the middle circle, design thinking. So this is where I just talked about the empathy building. Right. Deeply understanding user context. And this is what drives innovation inside of organizations to date. Next, John's talking about computational design. Designing for billions of people in real time and at scale. Right. This is really the shift. And what he believes is this is where designers will interact more with machines. And what I believe, my personal nuance on this, is the middle progression required designers to also become design researchers. And that was an expansion of skill. When we hire designers at McKinsey, we like to find people that also know how to do design research, because one of the most important things you can do as a designer is build empathy with your user and be able to translate that into a meaningful product or service. I believe that over the next 10 years, one of the most important things that a designer can do is learn how to interact with AI and complex data sets in addition to building empathy, therefore multiplying their own power. Point being, it's time for artificial intelligence and designers to unite as one. Because designers know the difference. Designers know the nuance between creating an experience that a consumer is going to use once and a screen that they're going to be staring at all day long. Right? It's very difficult for a machine to create that personal element. There's a difference between me asking to play a song at my house using Alexa and sitting at work and saying, set up a meeting with Tom, Rob, and Tina. The implications are different, the complexity is different, and certainly if there's a mistake, it's different. You can extrapolate that to a range of situations. Imagine being in an emergency room and asking Alexa to do something. Would you trust it to do that? And so design knows the difference. Designers know the difference, and you need a human element employed in that aspect. There's also a tremendous amount of responsibility that AI carries. And this is something that only human actors can help shape AI to encourage it to be more responsible. Trends beget trends. So we've all seen in society, in multiple societies, countries, organizations, the pathways they follow as far as constraints, creating artificial boundaries for people. It is very easy for those to translate into AI because AI merely learns from what it's seen before. Just like in the doodles I had earlier, all of them had wings, therefore a bee must have wings. If I create an AI algorithm for hiring, and in the past we've been gender biased, my AI will then be gender biased. So the trend begets trends. And so only a human designer can be thoughtful about that in order to counter that type of behavior. It results in unintended consequences, potential misuse, There's been a lot of press in recent years about different things happening on social media in order to manipulate people's behavior. All right? Lots of questions about privacy and data, and maybe seeing something in your Facebook profile that might indicate you're susceptible to hearing about a certain type of information that might change how you think about something. So the implications quite severe in some cases. Over the last 10 years or so, the topic of data privacy and use of personal information for designers typically ends with a conversation that goes something like, well, if we exchange with our users something of value, they'll give us the information we want. All right, what's the minimal amount of information we can get from them, and therefore we're going to give them something from our application or service. Well, now there's a new consideration because AI is able to extrapolate so much more about the person, so they don't even know what they're giving up anymore. You give up one small piece of information, it's going to start to assume a range of things. It might get it wrong, but it might get it right. And so, for this segment, I would just leave you with the responsible AI challenge, if you would. As you think about data, and as you think about working with artificial intelligence, consider privacy and security. Help to shape the AI, shape the neural network. What if everyone agreed not to draw wings on bees? What would happen? It's going to change that brain. Striking the right balance between the aggressive nature of organizations just to solve the problem, right, and build these things, versus building something that solves a beneficial problem. There's an important nuance there. Do you just need the thing, or do you need the thing to do the right thing? Establishing a generally shared framework and set of principles for the beneficial and safe use of AI. I think these are things that I think society at large needs to agree on. But I think if we all as designers moving forward in the products and services we create can agree on this, it's quite powerful. And sharing best practice around safety and bias. Telling the stories of bias are important so then people can understand how to avoid them. So there's a term I like to think about called augmented intelligence. And I think for designers, this is actually going to be far more powerful than artificial intelligence. Augmented intelligence is not about replacing humans, and this is the important nuance with AI. It's about enabling humans to interact with AI and make it far more powerful. How can we use data science to inform and empower human decision-making capabilities? This is what we as designers should all be seeking out. In 1997, there was a lot of splash and a lot of press about this AI supercomputer called Big Blue, Deep Blue, that was taking on the best chess player in the world. And it finally beat him. And everyone felt the world had changed profoundly, that the machine had beaten the human at chess. And the world moved on, and I think people still talk about this to this day as a pretty major inflection point in computing. What people talk a lot less about is something that happened in the chess community afterwards. And that was a number of chess players went off on the side, and they created a side thread of chess called advanced chess, where they would use computers to help inform their next move. And it became the combination of human plus computer. And what was found was that there was no computer that could beat this combination. Even the best computer going against the worst one with a human, the human would always win. And that's the important finding in how we need to carry forward AI. That law has not been broken to date. And what I fundamentally believe is that augmented AI and being able to leverage the power of the human and the computer requires a sense of design consciousness, not just within us as designers, but within the organizations that we both serve and work within. As designers, we have a responsibility not just to create meaningful products and services, but also to spread the notion and the idea and the power of design throughout the organizations we work within and we work for. Rule number one, principle number one, and this is something I've talked a little bit about already, empathy. I believe there's a deeper notion of this called extreme empathy. And what this means, just quite simply, that empathy does not just live only within the designers. It is our responsibility to translate customer empathy, user empathy into the organization, into our entire organization. So our CEOs have a sense of the voice of the customer. They can hear what the customer's thinking, doing, feeling when they're making decisions. If they can't do that, they will very likely be swayed by the data. The data is becoming so powerful and so readily available and so fast and so accurate, they believe that the customer will be lost. And so the designer owns the empathy. They must bring it to the forefront. And there's a really fun and interesting story here with a major consumer company that makes clothes washers. And they wanted to really leapfrog a little bit in the market and come out with better clothes washers. The data that was evaluated and considered indicated that perhaps there's no real white space in this category. Maybe a connected washer would be helpful. Maybe we automate certain functions, some programs, maybe it connects to your mobile phone. The designers went out and they went into people's homes and they looked around. And this is a common scene from North America. The clothes washer's there, and then there's a large, deep sink. And the sink, for many of you that maybe have children, you often see the soiled clothing going in there first before it goes into the washer to be scrubbed. In other countries, the designers observed, and this is particularly prominent in both India and Pakistan, laundry would be scrubbed like this, often before it goes in the washer, sometimes just without having the washer involved. A very common scene. So the data was saying one thing, the research was saying another. This information had to go fairly senior in order for someone to really have the courage to make a really tough decision, to say, we're going to try something new. We're going to try something really different that's never been done before. And they came out with this product that has a tub in the top. And it was really profound for the marketplace. It was a very different type of product. It had a tub that you could scrub in and then dump the water out. No one had ever seen anything or even thought of it before. But it was only because of the data plus the human insights they were able to arrive at this answer. Extreme empathy. As data becomes more readily available and more accurate, and it comes in faster, we as designers have more and more pressure to develop our qualitative insights more quickly. Get to the insights faster, otherwise we're going to go with the data. One of the ways that we can do that is by using mobile diary platforms. One such platform is Vidlet, and there are several of them on the market. And what this allows you to do is to input a set of questions, send them to users on their mobile devices, record the feedback, do the qualitative insights, the ethnography, very quickly assemble a highlight reel, and then show that within not just your design team, but your entire organization. Have folks here used mobile diaries before? Some? Okay, well, I'd encourage you all to at least start looking into it, to the extent that you care about developing user insights quickly, and I would hope you would. Rapid insights leads to rapid iteration and rapid creation of new concepts. As designers, it's very critical that we move from insights to ideation to concept as quickly as possible. The economics of experimentation have inverted to the point whereas if you're not experimenting, your competitors are. So therefore, by default, you're losing. There are tools that exist today that make it incredibly easy for designers to rapidly create prototypes and then test and iterate. And then you can imagine on your own the power of combining the rapid insights with the rapid prototyping tool that a designer can use. Suddenly, what was 3 people's job just a few years ago between a design researcher, a designer, and a prototyper is 1 person doing this in probably a fraction of the time. And when you combine this with the data, you can see you can imagine the results on your own. Weaving design into your organization's fabric. So this is a theme I keep coming back to in a way, in that designers, our job isn't just empathy and designing things, it's carrying that message throughout our organization. Given I'm from San Francisco and in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, I'm often asked in reference to many of the firms there, well, why is so-and-so, how are they so great at design? Why is that company #1 in design? And you can all imagine your favorite company you think of when you think of design. Well, is it because they have the most designers? Probably not. You know, there's a big debate who has the most designers. You can imagine some of these very large consulting firms have, you know, literally thousands of them. The consumer companies can't hardly compete. Do they have the best designers? Maybe, but that's also a debate. I think our team has the best designers. I think a lot of people would say their teams have the best designers. But what these organizations do, they get everyone in their company to care about design, to orient around the customer. Everyone understands it. And by doing that, what you do, you empower everyone to become a designer. And that is something that all designers must embrace, is empowering their own organizations. Falling in love with data and analytics. So I think several years ago, this slide might have said designers should fall in love with research and ethnography and insights. And now we've transitioned. It's time to embrace data and learn to play with it. Find a data scientist, understand their job. What makes them tick? Data doesn't have to be complex. Data can be a survey, something on SurveyMonkey you just send out to your friends to validate something that you heard from a qualitative standpoint. All right? Because if qualitative insights are the spark, the quantitative is the fuel. And that's what's going to create the boom. Embrace and nurture new skills. And so you're catching that largely as a theme throughout this conversation. We all as designers need to continue to push ourselves to learn new things. Yes, there's a craft. Yes, there's artifacts. now there's design research, and now there's AI and data and new tools. Embrace these new tools, learn how to use them. It makes us all better designers. Fundamentally believing and embracing that design transforms workflow. When undergoing a design transformation, you're presented with a choice. You can optimize, which is fine, and that's just, let's organize this row of seats more nicely so everything lines up. And that's great. Or you can invent. And invent means creating new value, changing the way that things are done. Let's see if we can make this entire thing better for everyone. I recently worked with a large utility company in Northern California, the company that provides power, electric, gas to millions and millions of consumers, to homes, residences. Lots of people count on them. One of the things that this company needs to do is go out on a regular basis and inspect all of their assets, these pipelines, the transformers, the transmission cables, etc. To do this, they have literally hundreds of vans and trucks driving around all day long. And when these trucks stop, I went along for a ride along to see how they did their work. The first thing the driver had to do was pull out a paper form, get out from the vehicle, walk around it, and tick off all the different things that were happening around that truck that could be dangerous or hazardous. It was called the safety tailboard. And part of the reason was for liability reasons. This is a large corporation, just in case there were children in the area, just in case something happened with the vehicle. It's looked like somewhat of a time-intensive and kind of a mundane task. They never thought anything of it. They just thought, this is something we have to do. What we were seeking to do was to redesign their inspection process. They didn't think the safety part was really anything to do with it. But when we created our digital solution, the first thing we did was, as soon as the iPad noticed that the vehicle had stopped, automatically you would pop up the safety check to say, is there anything going on around you? Tap it into here. We took what was about a 5-minute process down to about 30 seconds, and you can imagine the implications of doing that across hundreds of stops per day, thousands of stops per week. That's a profound implication for their business, and it also resulted in higher safety. Design transforming workflow. How can we change the way we do things to make them better for both the users and our business? Empowered agile teams working together. So, I don't know how many of you have been around agile or have experienced it or may in the future. You can do, you can do design without agile, but you can't do agile without design, because then you're just doing, most likely, the wrong thing faster. Agile teams need designers to help sort out, let's make the right thing, and then let's make the thing right. And only by co-locating, particularly in the early days, are you able to do these things. And the way we like to think about it is bringing data scientists, designers, and engineers all into the same room, working together. Creating that healthy tension between these experts, right? No one's right and no one leads. It's a lot of back and forth. That's the only way you can arrive at the right answer. So to recap, a few of these principles around building augmented artificial intelligence, or augmented intelligence, if you will. Extreme empathy, the economics of experimentation, changing the DNA of your organization to include design, falling in love with data and analytics, and AI really, embracing new skills. Think about tomorrow, what's the new skill you're going to add to your set? Mobile diaries, prototyping, etc. What might it be? How can you help transform workflow inside the organization you work with? And then focusing more on collaboration and co-location, and really fighting for that and making sure that happens. And so one just bit of a fun story here, and back to the doodles and sketches I was telling you earlier about. So one of the things, I believe that designers are responsible for is building bridges to users. Right? How do we bridge our organization to bring them closer to the user? And I had to chuckle when last night at dinner I was tasked by this app to draw a bridge. And the way I think about bridges is that it takes us really from our mind, from here to our heart. That to me is the bridge. And as designers, that's what we're after. That human element. We're responsible for that. We're responsible for bringing that into our organizations. And what's interesting here about the AI engine, it didn't see a heart, but it did see an ear, because the heart allows you to listen. And so it got that part right. Thank you. Were there questions?
Obrigado pela palestra e tem uma reflexão, acho que para trazer para todos nós designers, que é a inteligência artificial é uma tecnologia que pode trazer muitos ganhos, mas também pode trazer coisas ruins. E um problema não é da tecnologia, e sim da intenção das pessoas. E aqui no Brasil a gente vivenciou esse momento nas eleições devido às fake news. E minha reflexão é como é que a gente pode moderar ou controlar essa implementação da inteligência artificial dentro do nosso processo de sociedade, de construção do indivíduo e das experiências que a gente faz. E a segunda pergunta é se isso é um problema de design.
Too many questions. No, I was kidding. So the question, and I hope I capture it right, how do we moderate, manage, and control AI to prevent things like fake news from permeating our society, right? And how do we manage that? And then, importantly, is that a design problem? And so this is a tricky one, right? And I think if you were just to read the headlines, and so just publicly available information that you would see about how Facebook recently managed through some of the elections in the United States, and there's no specific insight here that I know of other than anything I've read, is that they actually had a war room set up to monitor with humans all of the information and all of the feeds, and so they could aggressively address so-called fake news populating their content. And it absolutely is a design challenge. First and foremost, designers need to help build the systems with which those humans are going to interact with to help clear that out efficiently. I believe, personally, that's going to become more and more efficient, more thorough, and eventually there'll be AI out there to combat AI, and that's where we'll end up. Great, thank you. Yeah.
Eu vou falar em português aqui. Tá. Tá me ouvindo? Right here. Eu vou falar em português. Tá. Eu queria fazer uma pergunta para você, uma reflexão com relação a isso. Eu gostei do primeiro vídeo que você mostrou para nós, né? E como você falou que os designers contextualizam, e acredito que também as máquinas inteligentes também contextualizam de certa forma. E Joseph Licklider, que escreveu no artigo deles em 1960 sobre Mentes Simbioses, ele fala que as inteligências artificiais ou máquinas inteligentes devem nos ajudar humanos a crescer, de certa forma, a desenvolver novas habilidades. Mas, pelo que eu tenho visto, é que essas inteligências artificiais têm nos tornado cada vez mais preguiçosos. Né? Na sua opinião, o que é que você olha para esse fenômeno que está acontecendo agora e o que, na minha opinião, pode, de certa forma, prejudicar nosso comportamento humano no futuro? Né? Eu quero que a Amazon coloque para mim música. Amazon, faça isso para mim. Essas coisas, de certa forma, podem nos tornar preguiçosos e prejudicar o nosso comportamento como humano. Qual é a sua opinião com relação a isso?
Great. Thanks for the question. At the risk of missing something, I'll abbreviate it slightly in that AI holds the potential to make humans lazy and allowing us to do things more easily versus empowering us. And what does that mean? I think that's certainly true in one way to look at it, but I would actually flip the script slightly on that, is it makes us more efficient because it removes some of the mundane tasks. But then also importantly, if you think back to the chess story, it empowered those chess players to be better. And if you think to the Stanford story of pneumonia, it's allowing those doctors to do a better job. But it's also saving those doctors time from looking at patients that perhaps don't have pneumonia or allowing them to spend their time more effectively. So I believe quite strongly that humans will find a way to spend their time more efficiently. That just tends to be what we've done with every advancement, right? Whether it's something from a steam engine to the Industrial Revolution or whatever it might be. Any other questions?
Hi, here. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for your presentation. You talked about augmented AI, and you gave the example of the chess players. Do you know any other examples in which augmented AI are being used right now? Any other cases, you know?
Yeah, certainly. So I think as you look across a range of industries, you'll see examples. I've seen them in some of the ride-sharing services. For example, you'll see the human actor making a decision about, let's just say, a fare that you'd like to choose, right? And that could be AI presenting you with information about a fare, and then you're making a decision about which one you want to pay. You can also imagine perhaps an air traffic controller being alerted to a potential situation based on history that the algorithm knows about, that now the air traffic controller needs to act upon. That's a very common one. And I think the best way to think about, the multiple use cases around this is, well, wouldn't it be helpful if there was something kind of hinting at what might happen next, and then allowing me to make the decision as a human as to what's going to happen, right? And there certainly are. There's a lot of examples, and I think given more time, we could probably jump into a bunch more. Thank you.
Hey, here.
Hi.
So I will try in English. If it doesn't work, I try in Portuguese. It surely will work.
Sure.
So I have heard that AI are impacting the families and the kids negatively. Like the kids are asking the voice machines about movies, about anything, and sometimes that these machines doesn't understand or doesn't answer right, and those kids start to say bad words or something like that, and these machines just answer in a kind way.
Yeah.
And these kids are kind of receiving that, even they say bad words, even they complain, it doesn't affect, and then they go to school, for example, and start to do that in the same way and this is affecting the growing of those kids.
Yeah.
What is your thought about this?
Yeah. Well, and this is certainly my personal opinion only. Certainly not a corporate position. So I have 4 kids, and also have multiple smart devices. Siri, Google Home, Alexa, whatever it might be. That doesn't mean I no longer exist, right? And I think throughout time, there's always been something provoking or enabling certain behaviors that others will perceive to be negative, right? It could have been Elvis Presley a couple of decades ago. That doesn't mean the parents don't exist, right? That's our role, and I think the parents' role is starting to also transform and evolve, because you've got to learn to manage this technology. And I personally don't believe that lots of screen time is valuable. Okay, well, we have to manage that. But there's a wealth of information that's pretty amazing. When I was coming here, my kids started asking Alexa all sorts of questions about Rio, and it was fantastic. I learned a ton of things. So, the wealth of information available, I think, far outweighs the potential detriment. But it's our responsibility to really make sure that's managed. Thank you all.